interject. This is actually a reprise of the 2017 World Championship match. These two players already doing battle in 2017. So very interesting context to think that David's first World Championship came against this same opponent. Is that going to be a psychological factor here for Harshan, out for revenge for losing that matchup a few years ago?
Yeah, certainly a lot at stake here. You see the giant check for $10,000 just kind of waiting in the background. I'm sure both of these players would love to pocket that check, or a smaller form, of course. But yeah, Harshan perhaps exacting his revenge this year, or David Eldar cementing his name and his legacy in competitive Scrabble. These two players both previously lived in England. Harshan still resides there. David Eldar has since moved to Australia, but a lot of familiarity between the players and their game as well. Wellington, when you play a player you've got significant experience against, how do you think that changes the way you approach the game and the plays you choose to make?
And knowing your opponent is a very tricky thing, because sometimes the key is not allow the knowledge of the opponent's style of play to over influence how you approach the game towards them, because sometimes the opponent also knows that you've had this number of experiences with him, and it could actually be a very tricky thing when he decides to use that knowledge that he knows against you. So it's a very tricky thing, and it is good to just play the game by its merits and take each move at a time, and make the best of each move, rather than wanting to capitalize on what you think they are thinking about right now, and get yourself in trouble there.
Yeah, great words of wisdom from Wellington. Perhaps against lower rated opponents, there are clear gaping holes in a player's game you may be able to take advantage of. But these two gentlemen, two of the finest players in the world, you can't have a glaring hole or a glaring weakness in your game to be present on this stage. Fatigue also certain to be a factor in this tournament. We've seen some uncharacteristic mistakes across the course of play. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that this is the second of two major tournaments held on back-to-back weeks here in Las Vegas. David did compete in that first one. He made it to the finals of that tournament as well, where he was defeated by, well, none other than Wellington Jighere, who's on stream with us here. So this 65 games of very high-stakes Scrabble already played by these folks. Will, to what degree do you think fatigue may be an issue for these players?
Yeah, it's Scrabble is not an easy game to play at this volume over time. I would think that for the players in this position, you're just hoping that adrenaline can get you some or all of the way through the finals. If I were putting myself in their shoes, I would hope that adrenaline gets me through 3 or 4 games, and then you might just see if the series gets to a game 6 or a game 7. That's where I think we need to be prepared. If either player makes an uncharacteristic mistake at that point, that's where you could see fatigue creeping in after so much Scrabble having been played in the last couple weeks. So you hear stories about, chess players playing chess for, 6 or 7 hours and burning more calories than a marathon runner or something like that. I've heard stories like that. And Scrabble is really no different. You have to have good physical conditioning to sit there and use your brain at that high of a level for so long. So fatigue, absolutely a factor. And I think, as I say, in game 6 or 7, don't be surprised if you see it rear its head.
We saw David Eldar yesterday with the Scrabble equivalent of the yips from baseball. He failed to pull the trigger on a word that is reasonably common, doggiest. Also missed on a 135-point double-double, Cozener, yesterday. Those are mistakes we don't expect a player of his caliber to miss. So perhaps certainly fatigue after a lot of high-stakes games. Harshan has won the right to go first in games 1 and 3, and if necessary, 5 and 7, by virtue of having a better record. And with that, we are off. D, Promising start. A T and an F on the rack for Harshan to begin. This is a rack that will not bingo for him, but some good options. Wellington, what would you look to do out of this rack?
For a start, I usually if you can't bingo, the next important thing is to play the a high scoring move, and I think the what he has just arranged Feared seems like a very good start, and an ST leave isn't a bad rack leave at all. So I'll agree with this move.
Fjord, also the highest move according to a quick computer simulation here, and Harshan not going to spend too much more time thinking about that. The ST leave, stellar for him, and David Eldar now to respond BIOOQTU on his rack. He'll have a few high scoring options. QUOIF plays to the F in Fjord, QUOIT through the O in Fjord, or he could hold on to the Q and play BOO, overlapping it on the left side. Will, of those options, what is your favorite here?
Well, before I share my favorite, I just want to give a shout out to Harshan for opening vertically and renewing the spirited debate in the Scrabble community about whether you should play your first word vertically or horizontally on the board. Curious to hear everybody's thoughts in the chat on Twitch about which way they think is the best way to open. I know that people are very devoted to their choice there. As far as for David here, sometimes you want to at least consider when you have QU together, is it possible to play a word that keeps QU on my rack for next turn and hope for something better? I don't really think there is a word like that here. I think he's very, very likely to play quaff to the F of Fjord, get rid of that QU combination, score decently well, and try to draw a bingo next turn saddled with that B. So it's not going to be super likely, but maybe he's considering keeping his QU for next turn here.
Quaff, the seemingly best play for David, is going to give back a killer opportunity for Harshan next turn, who into his ST leave picked up the blank. I won't yet tease that word, but perhaps Wellington and Will have spotted it and are sitting there with a smile. I will warn everybody in the chat that we are focusing more on the strategic aspect of these plays, so we will be calling out and spoiling options and playable bingos early on this stream. If you prefer to use these as puzzles, put us on mute, or if you're watching these videos after the fact, perhaps pause. Quaff the play now, and Harshan has the opportunity to score 109 points on this turn. He already had this word playable as a double-double, hitting both double word squares through the I. Will he find this one now with the 3 underlaps it requires? Do you guys see it?
Yeah, I think we do. This is one of those great situations, Wellington, where you probably already see the word and you just have to realize that it still fits on the board. And I'm a little worried that Harshan has spelled out a different word here, which is still going to score a solid number of points, but it won't reach both double word scores. It'll come just short. And Harshan would be hard-pressed to imagine that he has a better word than rimosity here for 96, but he actually does. I'm curious, Wellington, if you think he'll see it.
Yeah, I think he'll see it. For a player of his caliber and at a stage of this game where the fatigue hasn't yet kicked in, it shouldn't be a difficult find. But the funny thing is, we never can tell where the human mind drifts to this stage, especially when you are being on live stream, and it can be very tricky. So let's find out if he spots it. But for the viewers out there, I think the word is ministry. I think he's almost there.
I think he's got it.
He's got it.
Beautiful.
Ministry has been spotted by Harshan. A killer opportunity, 109 points, the blank to be an N. And that will bring Harshan ahead 135 to 34. Well spotted by the pediatrician from England. And David can't be thrilled to see that come down, though he certainly had his series of great spots yesterday. David looking to respond to the double out of BEINOTT. This is a rack that will not bingo for him, and these racks I find to be rather tough. Looking to play, 3 or 4 tiles, score some points, keep a bingo prone leave. He'll have options such as BITO or OBIT above the Y in Ministry, but those may give back some big overlapping plays. Wellington, is there anything else you would look to do out of this rack if you're David Eldar?
If I'm David Elder, I'll definitely be wanting to, because a good start like this from our opponent means that the game should go crazy. This is one of such times where I wouldn't want to be defensive, so I'll probably, any move I play will definitely lead to a triple opening. So that is whatever I do with this rack is going to either beat or whatever, but a tile must get to the triple lane just to create some chaos somewhere. Perhaps it could, because when your opponent starts this well, you need to kind of force him into defensive play in order to be able to have higher chances of catching up somewhere down the line. And you could open a triple lane, and he might not have an optimal play through there, but he also has to watch out for his lead, so thereby forcing him to go play where you want him to play. So I think that will generally be my strategy at this stage of the game.
Harshan, a player we have seen across the duration of this tournament, make some very defensive moves, opting for more defensive options than even us in the commentator booth had considered at multiple different junctures. So we'll see, David, how aggressive he chooses to be in opening the board. Will, would you also be looking to open a triple opportunity out of this rack?
It's a good question. It seems like David is seriously, at least he was seriously considering playing obit instead of Beto, which would not open the triple lane except to an S by playing OR and buy. So that seemed like he was considering it, and now it looks like he's considering just playing OB there, thinking that his ENTTI leave maybe combines well with the R and D of Fjord. I don't know how I feel about that. My gut reaction was very similar to Wellington, where I felt like a more aggressive opening was certainly warranted here at such a big early deficit, but maybe David's going to be a little more patient here instead.
Yeah, I would also certainly be looking to open the board in this situation, but David feels otherwise. Perhaps the floating R, the floating D in Fjord, he feels couple very nicely with EINTT on his rack. David choosing a play that nobody in the commentary booth chose. I'm sure y'all in chat have some opinions as well. I'm broadcasting from several minutes in the future, so I can't respond to that chat and your feelings right now, but I'm sure there's some riveting conversations going on as well. Now, after a short play, OB, Harshan has to have David pinned on a pretty good rack here. You generally don't play 2 tiles like that unless your leave is rather strong, but the R and the D together are rather tough to address fully. Harshan has some options to do so. He could play Poplar, Poplar, or maybe the word Apollo, maybe a smaller play as well, just something like OOP, or he can look to the top of the board to try to score additional points with the play like Plap, PLAP, making LOR and a buy. Will, would you be looking to knock out the R or the D, or just keep scoring points?
Well, as you point out, Matt, the problem with blocking the R and the D is it's very difficult to do so productively while also scoring any number of points. It's tough. If you're Harshan, you obviously have a nice early lead, but one of the worst things you could do would be to overly sacrifice a ton of points to play defense on those letters, only to still somehow allow a bingo elsewhere on the board. So I would lean towards playing Plap here on top of Ob, just because you're getting both of those P's off the rack, you're scoring quite well, and if David, and it looks like that. Oh, instead he's just played Lap. Interesting, Wellington.
Yeah, it's interesting. I would definitely have added the P But maybe he has other plans, and might be a more strategic move from him. So
Yeah, we've seen a lot of non-standard moves from Harshan across the tournament, moves that are surprising, and yet the results speak for themselves here. David just won playable bingo. He knows that, and he drops it very quickly here. Nitrated, a 61 pointer. He still trails 156 to 119 after that play, but his gambit did work out. He opened a scoring spot. Harshan played there, and the bingo line stayed available for him. So, well schemed by David, perhaps.
Yeah, this board now, after nitrated, it was kind of bereft of scoring opportunity, but now nitrated has opened up 2 triple word scores. So depending on what David draws, he's pretty likely to get a good follow-up score. I'm curious to see Harshan's drawn his 3 replenishment tiles. And those are going to be really important because David has a really nice play of itchy and nigh to the N of nitrated. One of those words, if you're a North American player, NY might look unfamiliar, but it is valid in the world lexicon. But a play there is going to score a ton. And I'm just really curious to see if Harshan will draw a play that blocks it. And I'm not sure if he has.
Itchy is going to score very well for David on the left side of this board, but its anagram Tichy, T-I-C-H-Y, also plays on the right side. Not quite as many points, but David going to have a good scoring option in either instance. Harshan into L-O-O-P picking up T-I-X. He'll have some scoring options if he wants to retain the X for the future. T-O-P-O-I on the right side, making E-T and D-O plays for 30 points. Exploit, another play he can make, dropping down from the E and nitrated for 32. Or if he wants to keep things tight here, we may see OXO play underneath the T, E, and D in nitrated. Wellington, between those plays, what are you looking to do here?
Well, I think I would favor exploit because exploit he doesn't have a great rack at the moment, and especially since you are leading, you have to fish for more ties, and exploit is a great way to do that, and extend the lead to a bingo lead, such that even if your opponent responds with a bingo, you are still in the game, and then you're going for fresh tiles, and so exploit would most likely be the move for me.
So exploit, yeah. We've seen multiple players on this stream across the last 2 weeks with a lead not play too many tiles at a time, get caught with a lot of tiles that score just 1 point, and watch their lead slowly evaporate. So I think that's a great decision there and a great line of thought. Will, do you agree with the play of exploit, or might you do a different option here?
I do agree. I think, oddly, I would be apt to potentially miss exploit as an option just because I would be tunnel visioning so hard on playing to either of those triples. The thing about exploit going down from the E of nitrated is that it scores quite well, 32 points. That's about an average score at this level of play, but it doesn't reach any, triple word score. And I think Harshan hasn't generated it as an option here. Not that OXO or Topoi are big mistakes over exploit, but I do feel like that's a play that could be missed from time to time.
Yeah, so OXO, the option we see from Harshan, is right in line with the defensive play we've seen from him all tournament, and David immediately dropping Itchy down for a massive score, 56 points for Itchy after 26 points for OXO, and despite the 109-point bingo on the second turn for Harshan, we have a tight game, Harshan leading 182 to 119 now. ILPT, the leave after OXO, and Harshan always takes his time, makes sure he does all of his paperwork, tracks his tiles correctly. He wants to be absolutely sure he hasn't made a mistake, mistracking the tiles, miskeeping the score. So being very diligent there. DILNPST, the rack now. And this one looks to be rather tricky. As I mentioned, you don't want to get caught up scoring very few points out of these racks, but not many other options. Will, what would you look to do here?
Man, this is brutal. And it's all of a sudden after Oxo and Itchy, those two beautiful scoring spots have been used up, and the board is back to extremely tight, almost no points on offer anywhere for Harshan. And I think an extra factor to note is that formerly Fjords was open as an S hook, and Itchy has blocked that. So Harshan drawing that S, but having no really good place to use it outside of laps, which you really, when you're looking at a board to assess the value of your S, you want to see those words, you want to see those spots on the board where you can end a 7-letter word in an S, and there really is no place to do that right now. So I think he's going to be thinking about that here. I'm not really sure if he has a great option that allows him to do that. It's going to be tough here. I'm really not seeing a play that makes me very excited, Wellington.
Yeah, there aren't any exciting plays for him, except this is where you have to switch to coming up with a strategy for going forward. And I think this is a he has done a lot for himself recently, and I believe he'll be able to come up with a nice strategy. But I can still told comes down, and well, it's not a very, very bad play, but I probably would have. I don't like the idea of scoring so few points when you are leading, so I probably have done something else. But this is also a very nice play.
Yeah, just not many scoring options there. The only opportunities to score significant points would require using the P in front of LAP to make plap, making a play like dip or lip and throwing this board wide open, giving David a triple on otherwise a tight board. David with 6 vowels here, AEEEIIL, the rack. He does have a nice 6-letter word down from the H, Healee, for 18 points, Healee, but that retains 2 I's. He could look to play additional vowels, Edile, Aedile, or Eide, playing through that D, or maybe look to exchange here. Wellington, of those options, what do you prefer?
Well, knowing David's style of play a little over the last couple of days, I think David will most likely go for exchanging here. I'll be surprised if he doesn't exchange, because Healy would have been a good option, but the double I leave is not very friendly, and with the situation on the board, these are some of the times where it is actually good to exchange, especially when there aren't much that your opponent can do, given the way the board is. So exchanging bad tiles at this point in time isn't a bad option.
Yeah, tricky turn. Will, what would you do here, and what do you expect David to do here?
I'm concurring that exchanging seems like a good idea, if only because this board position is so challenging. Instead, he's going to play elite. Okay, that is a surprising one. This one surprises me, if only because he's just given Harshan a good place to score on a silver platter there. Maybe he's assessing that after Harshan's play of Told, which only used a D and an L, perhaps Harshan is in less of a position to use a high scoring tile to reach that upper left triple, but in fact, he is going to be able to do that there. It's a surprising play by David, kind of opening up such an obvious place to score for Harshan.
Yeah, I am in concurrence with that analysis. That rather surprising. And Harshan able to cash in 29 points, FEINT coming down. Also had the opportunity to play Sniffed in the same spot, 9 more points, but does burn the S. Wellington, do you like the play of Feint, or do you think you would have used the S to score 9 more there?
I would definitely have gone with Sniffed because the board doesn't have much opportunities for an S, and if you notice, there are still a lot to play for, and there is one such time when it is actually good to grab as much points as you can. So I would definitely have gone for Sniffed instead of Feint.
I think this game is incredible at demonstrating, even among the cream of the crop, the top world-class players, there's a lot of variation in the plays that may be made. Elite and Told, I think, definitely plays that would be different plays from different players in this room. Feint as well, another instance of that. David now AEINRRR on his rack. And once again, a decision to make here. Does he keep the board tight? Does he look to play a little bit longer? He'll have options like ART in front of lap, making a lap and rob for 14, CARR from the C in itchy for 10. Those hold nice bingo prone leaves, or he could look to play much longer and score points. Carnier, Carrier, or Harrier playing from that C or that H. Will, what would you look to do out of this rack?
Yeah, I just want to point out that David leaving AEI on his previous play. I'm sure he was thrilled to see 4 consonants come out of the bag onto his rack. But of course, be careful what you wish for, because 3 of those consonants all R's, which make things very awkward for him. So I would definitely expect him to make a long play from the C here, whether it's Carnier or Carrier. I think he's extremely likely to turn over those tiles, score a bunch of points, and hope for a more balanced rack going forward.
Wellington, in this situation, do you concur? Play long in this situation?
I'll definitely play long in this situation because evidently the tiles haven't been too favorable to him after Ichi, and playing long would be a good way to find a way to upturn that. And in terms of between Kania and Carrier, I'll probably go for Kania because you don't want to place something that has an S hook just at the bottom of the triples, so in order to prevent your opponent from harvesting too much points and taking the game too easily out of your reach. So I'll most likely go for Kania. Yeah.
I think 3 out of 3 in this booth, we like Carnier. David, we've seen this from him before. The exasperated sigh, the hands on the head, surrender cobra, stare at the ceiling. Is perhaps he considering playing an 8-letter word here? We've seen him do this before when he's not sure of a potential bingo. Do you think he's considering a bingo here, or is he just flummoxed by the situation?
I can't imagine that he will play a bingo here. And just for context, if you're viewing along on Twitch, David's tiles are all 1-point tiles. These are the letters that we learned those words, as Wellington alluded to earlier, using tools like Ziziva. Oh, wow, this is shocking.
He's played it. Fariner, non-word here for David.
Harshan's going to challenge this immediately.
Definitely going to.
What a gift. I'm stunned.
I think the word that is confusing him is foreigner, F-U. Yeah, that would be the word that is confusing him here.
Furriner, yes, is a valid 8. David will lose his turn in this situation, and Harshan gifted the opportunity to go twice in a row here. David, we saw yesterday the yips on his words. He pulled the trigger, or didn't pull the trigger on a few yesterday, and today opting to take the chance, and he will get burned and lose a turn. Wow, uncharacteristic mistake, I believe, for David Eldar here.
Yeah, hugely uncharacteristic, Wellington. I mean, I know we saw it a couple times yesterday, but in my experience playing David, he is so solid on his words, and that is a stunning turn of events to me.
Yeah, it's a very, very shocking one. I never expected that. But like we noted a while ago, I think the words can be confusing sometimes, and when you've been playing tough notch Scrabble for almost 3 weeks now, there's a high likelihood of one mixing these words up, and I think on a very good day David wouldn't make a mistake like this, but the pressure is on, and a lot of fatigue. I think we underestimated how easy fatigue could come in, and I think this is one of such instances. And I don't think it takes anything away from his prowess in the game, and I think it was just an honest mistake because foreigner was probably where the confusion came from.
Yeah, and now Harshan, a tough decision. He has full knowledge of David's rack and opportunity to set up perhaps his S here. I'm a little surprised to see him play this quickly. These turns so tricky, but Craven the play for him. Will, what do you think about that?
I think this is a smart idea just because another option for him on this turn would have been to play Vant into the T of Ministry, making a lap and knob. That would have been kind of a dangerous play to make because that word takes an A hook for Avant. But because Harshan just saw all 7 of David's tiles, he knows that playing Vant there is going to be met with something like Re-Ran and Avant, which makes David's next turn really easy. Whereas Harshan's managed to block the play that we had just suggested for David of Carnier by playing Craven here. So I think this is a very, very good job by Harshan to adjust his play based on the extra knowledge that he just gained from David's rack after his play of Fariner.
I saw potential for a setup. He's got an S. He knows his opponent doesn't have one. So maybe trying to set up an S hook somewhere. He has partially done that. Craven does take the back S. But yeah, he's able to make an opening play. He knows he won't be bingoed on through any of those floaters as well. And David's going to have a weak response here, likely something like River through the V, or Rear making ER and NA on the right side if he really wants to open this board up. He now faces a 65-point deficit and is running out of opportunity here. Wellington, what would you look to do if you were David in this situation?
Well, the strategy still comes down to the same: play as much ties as possible. Well, but I think what he just played is...
As you say that, 2 tiles go down.
Yeah, it comes with 2 ties. But I think this is also quite an excellent play because the RAINE leave is if he gets lucky, he can get a bingo. And by playing ERR, he has exposed another bingo lane, and the board is now very open. So I think it was a smart play, but I probably would have favored disposing more tiles instead of playing just 2.
So ERR, the play for David. He looks to draw a bingo beginning in a Val to play on the top of the board, or use those floating EN in Craven or the D in Told. If I'm Harshan, I'm looking absolutely to knock out that E, play from or through it. Do you agree with that, Will? And if so, how would you do it?
Yeah, I mean, it's tempting, though, one of his higher scoring plays would just be to play Musk down Craven for 40 points. But knowing David's bingo-prone tiles, I think he will be that even though the K at the base of the board, if you're imagining, alongside Craven making EM and NU, the word Musk there, the K is not typically too scary of a threat, but just knowing that you have a pretty ironclad position here, if you're Harshan, yeah, I do expect to see him make a play like this, which is an extra nice play because he knows that David is unlikely to have an O. Again, just 2 turns ago, he saw all 7 of David's tiles. David only just played 2 tiles on his previous turn. So a play like Uke, which Harshan just played, is very likely to be met with a play of OK, reparalleling on top. So I do like this choice for Harshan.
Wellington, do you concur with that analysis? Would you have played through that E, tried to address some floating tiles for 8-letter bingos?
Well, this was a good play, but I would usually have most likely gone with a Musk because my reason for going with Musk would have been that I expect that if my opponent is lucky, he would most likely play bingo through at the top of the board, so thereby leaving the K down here for me to score possibly well with the J in unison. But I think that then if my opponent also has plays through the K, it means that he's not playing the bingos, and moreover had scored a handful of points earlier on and to consolidate on the leads. And I definitely would most likely not be going with Ilk because by my understanding, it scores a little bit too little for the kind of rack that he had.
Yeah, so again, the jury is split on that one, but Uke the play and David with a very tricky rack here. AAEILNR, no playable bingos for him. Looks to perhaps open up this board, but no S on his rack, making it rather difficult to do so. He's got plays through the K, IKAN or AKIN, maybe. Akin takes a back G, ICAN takes a back S, or maybe he just fishes off 1A here. What kind of expectation do you have out of this rack from David?
I think based on how he's been playing, he's gonna just play 1A. The reason for that is at the level that David is playing at, and Harshan as well, of course. He is going to be looking at his. Ooh, okay, interesting. He's set up his ala hook even more powerfully there. I would have expected just an A to come down for the reason that he's looking at his 6 remaining tiles after just playing off the A and saying, what bingos can I draw with different tiles that I could get from the bag? And if he kept that L, he had a good chance of drawing Aliener with an E, Alienor with an O, and several other bingos that would have played elsewhere on the board, especially at that top part of the board alongside ERR. So I'm understanding why he has set up his A hook there, but I was expecting him to just play a lone A.
This is going to make a very interesting decision for Harshan, who has no way to fully block that LA front hook. A is the only front hook to LA. He can partially do it, a play like Gum or Gump, making GABY and UP an option here, or he can ignore it entirely, score points at the bottom of the board with a play like GJUS. Wellington, what would you be thinking after a setup like that?
Well, the first response would have been to find a way of blocking the setup, but there's no safe way to do that, because if you play Gump, you are exposing a 9-timer, which is something you wouldn't want to be doing when you are this number of points up, and the opponent can just be lucky and he finishes you off in an instance, which was something that happened to me yesterday in my bids to want to get to the final. I think I agree with the play of Juice, because if my opponent played, having a partial knowledge of my opponent's rack from the phone he played earlier on, I would take my chances with him being able to utilize the A hook and playing a bingo. So I think I would agree with this move of Juice.
Yeah, I'm concurring with that. Sorry, Matt. I just want to also point out that even that setup of LA, again, a bingo in that spot holding all 1-point tiles is not the end of the world for Harshan. It would have scored, 70-ish points for David, but you can see Harshan's lead is well over 100. So he can really sustain a bingo in that spot and not be hell bent on blocking it the way that you would try to block other setups. So I do like the play for Harshan.
I'll point out that the play of LA and a lap sets up the A in 2 different spots, ALA, but also the new back hook exposed, a lap taking a back A as well. So David setting up A's in 2 ways. He'll miss on a bingo yet again, fish off an A for 9 points here, but hold a very bingo prone AEINRS, and he'll pull an E into that. We'll display the unseen pool now so that those of you following along at home can see what the players have seen on their tracking sheet as well. You see the pool, very interesting, 7 unseen E's and a blank. Got to be concerning for Harshan, as well as that Z and 2 S's for scoring opportunities here. He has found himself an A, and I imagine a play like Puha or Huma going to play on the top of this board here. What would you look to do in this situation, Wellington?
Well, Huma is a great move, which is why I would have expected that David wouldn't have dropped his A at JA, because JA doesn't open any additional bingo spots. I think I probably would have gone with Alapa, so that this other way is open, but it's still. So I think Huma was a great play from him, and that is what I would have played. Yeah.
And Huma setting up what David has already spotted, the extension to make Humanizer for 45 points for the AE.
Wow.
That is valid, Humanizer. And he's missed bingos otherwise, probably forced to fish off 1 or 2 tiles yet again on this turn. So will Humanizer for 45 blow up the bingo rack, go fishing for a blank, or once again try to open this board and bingo next turn?
Yeah, I mean, you can see the number of unseen tiles dwindling, and essentially you have to remember that even though David has been on a many turns long quest to get a bingo, the ultimate purpose is to try to win the game, and you can't win the game with a bingo if you continue to score 6, 7, 8 points per turn. You have to stay close enough on the scoreboard so that your eventual bingo matters in the game. So Humanizer, of course, 45 points is a beautiful score here on a difficult board. And it does take David further away from bingoing with those tiles, but it makes it so that if he does manage to draw a bingo here, and it looks like he's so close, he has drawn a playable bingo here, and it makes it so that that bingo actually matters now. So totally correct for him to play Humanizer.
Yeah, big spot for David. Tough to see that, but he did not miss it. And Harshan now got to make a decision. JAP and PEED looks like what he's got set up on his rack. He could also play IDE with SIP, ED, and RE in the top right part of the board. Wellington, what would you look to do here as Harshan?
Well, as Harshan, I'm definitely not allowing that arrow to survive this turn. So whatever I do will be around there. So IDE will be the move for me. Let him play a 9-letter word if he can through the RE, but I'm definitely not allowing that arrow to survive this turn because it seems like the only logical opening for David to come back into the game.
So PEED going to be the play here, and David going to bingo back on a different quadrant of the board.
This is terrifying for Harshan now because David has bingoed without the blank. This is not a good feeling for Harshan here to feel like your lead has just mostly evaporated and that David has managed to play a bingo without the second blank. This is a gut check moment for Harshan.
You really hope that blank is one of these 4 face down tiles if you're Harshan. Big moment here as drama builds. What has Harshan pulled? There's the Z. That'll help him score a W along with it, a B, and an O. No blank for Harshan with 10 tiles unseen. David, a 70% chance to draw it on his pull here. Will David draw the blank, or will he leave it in the bag? Things got very interesting with that pull, but Zowie from Harshan does play ZOWIE for 75 points, forming ZE from Scavage. What has David drawn? No blank in the first 5 tiles, 2 more shots at it. Will he draw a blank and an out bingo? There's an E and an O.
Well, the blank eludes them both. Incredible. It's the play that you mentioned, Matt, of Zowie alongside the E of Scavage is by no means an ironclad winning play. It would make the word Zay, and that absolutely has a ton of overlaps from Harshan's POV. You can see 2 N's in the pool, 2 E's in the pool, and A. Definitely possible for David to have an overlap of ZE. And remember, Zowie will empty the bag. So if David were to have a bingo in response, he would pretty easily end up winning the game, especially if it was able to have some higher up overlaps like Tano or something like that with the blank T. So Harshan is going to look and see Zowie very quickly, but his main issue is going to be, am I still going to lose the game after this beautiful 75-point play?
Yeah, he'll have to look at what playable bingos could hit alongside, and unseen to him are just so many options. Tonnage with a U, tonnage with an O, guanine, a number of nice overlaps after Zowie. Maybe he looks to play TOWZE on the other side of Scavage. Maybe he looks to avoid emptying the bag instead. What do you think we'll see from Harshan here, Wellington?
I'm definitely emptying the bag because considering there aren't many good options without emptying the bag. So it's a question of whether I'm going with a Zoe or Taos. And I think it is more difficult to bingo with the tiles left with Taos, because if you play Taos, you're forced to hook the EW for a bingo or play through the D. And with the tiles left unseen, if you it's possible that the opponent could even have the blank and still not be able to find any playable bingo. So I think I would most likely go with Taos, and I don't think the score difference isn't that much. Taos should be about the same number of points. Yeah.
One other very neat option for Harshan through the L to the E is BLOWZE for 50 points. That likely to score enough to outrun bingos and obstructing things a little bit better. But Harshan has set down Zowie. He's going to try to figure out what bingos will play alongside it before hitting his clock and cementing this play. Do you like BLOWZE a little better here?
It's an interesting choice. It does seem to block very effectively, but I do worry that even that does give up more potential hooks than Taos may, just with the particular unseen pool. But I think it looks like a pretty winning play as well, actually, as I think about it. You're getting more than enough points to withstand anything other than a bingo, and you are cutting off a lot of the board. So as I think about it more, I do like that play of Blouse, but it looks like Harshan is going to see that blank and breathe a big sigh of relief.
Wow, yeah, unbelievable moment there. He takes the chance, rolls the dice, spread not a consideration in a best of 7, barring a tie, but Harshan picking up that blank has to know he's in great shape here. I ran it through a computer simulation, Zowie to win roughly 79% of the time. Other options win significantly more. Tao's winning 96% of the time. So
wow,
maybe
that high.
Yeah, big missed opportunity for Harshan, but he will not be punished by it. And he'll go on to win game 1 of the World Scrabble Championship Finals. What a good one.
You got to worry about David making a mistake like Fariner and carrying that with him into the next game. He's going to look at that and see that's where the game kind of got away from him. The score was very close still at that point. If he had just been able to make a valid play and bingo on his next turn with his very promising rack, or maybe draw that blank somehow, it would be a totally different game. So I think for a player of David's stature, you can see him shaking his head there. Obviously upset, but I think something to look for is how quickly does he shake off that error. We all make mistakes, and he needs to just shake it off as quickly as he can.
And for Will and Wellington, we do have a microphone next to the board. We can catch post-game banter. I don't know to what degree we'll see a post-mortem from these players or a discussion about the turns, but as soon as the clock is stopped, we will cut our audio and switch to that one and see if we catch anything from these players. Likely hard to have that discussion when you know you've got 3 to 6 more games of Scrabble, but we'll give it a shot and see if we can catch anything. Harshan looks to play out on this situation, about going to be his highest scoring option to the left side of Zowie. And it looks like he is placing, something.
Abbott.
Okay, so sacrificing 1 point with the B instead of playing OE here, but spread not really a consideration here. Just go out and win the game for Harshan. If Abbott stays on the board, our final in game 1 will be 461 to 378 for the Brit, and we'll cut to that overhead mic now to see what we catch.
Let's do it.
Agree.
377.
Agree.
Well done.
For in with the U, right? That's what it was.
No, I've written it down here. Just couldn't remember. There was so many points I had to try. It's like 60 more points.
I get it. I completely get it.
Even if it's right.
Been there, done that.
Has to be right 40%, 30% of the time. It's just enough to try. I was not happy when you gave me an F. I'm like, oh no, I'm gonna have to try this. I've got it written down somewhere, but it's not valid. But I couldn't remember. I should have done
We get to take a break now, right? Like 5-10 minutes.
I'm taking a break.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I was expecting a break
Shall we
from you.
square the tiles before we go?
I don't need to, but we can if you want to.
Perfect.
Oh,
That's brilliant. Thank you so much.
All right, so there you have it, game one. David lamenting the phony he had challenged off, Farriner. Harshan quickly saying it's with a U, Furriner. That's what you got confused. The players look to take about a 5 or 10 minute break, stretch their legs. David gonna have to try to shake that one off. Always tough to overcome a mistake. We will keep the stream live and pull off the view of the board. But Harshan now leading 1-0 over David Eldar. That has to feel good. Harshan swept the last time these two met in the finals. Gotta feel good to have one game down already, right, Will?
Yeah, especially given that context, as we said 6 years ago, David just blowing through the finals en route to his first world championship. So Harshan, to get that first win, has to feel really good and build his confidence a little bit going forward. And again, I just... even for a player of David Eldar's stature, you just have to worry, making a mistake of that magnitude in this situation does not feel good. But it is absolutely critical that he put it in the rearview mirror and move on to the next game and continue to play the way he is capable of playing and how well he plays so often. So